The first human ship to make contact with the Ravagers was the destroyer Tenacious. Its captain did something that made the other alien species watching from their fleeing ship stop in shock. Instead of firing weapons from a safe distance, the Tenacious accelerated directly toward the largest Ravager bioship in its path. "All hands, brace for impact," the captain shouted. The destroyer's reinforced bow, built to survive collisions with asteroids, crashed into the Ravager creature at full speed. The bioship was massive, 3 times the size of the destroyer, but the Tenacious did not care. The human ship tore through the creature's flesh like a knife, ripping it apart from the inside. Just before the destroyer would have been consumed by the dying Ravager, the crew evacuated in escape pods, leaving their ship to detonate its reactor core inside the enemy. The explosion lit up space like a small sun. When the light faded, the massive Ravager was gone, and dozens of smaller ones near it were damaged or dead. On the Indomitable, Taman watched this happen and nodded grimly. "They're showing the Ravagers what humans do. We don't just fight. We win at any cost. All ships follow their example. Be unpredictable. Be aggressive. Make them afraid." Subin and Reaper Wing dove into the swarm of Ravager fighters. The enemy creatures were fast and deadly, moving in perfect coordination like a school of predatory fish. But they had never faced pilots like Subin. She pulled her fighter into a turn that registered 12 G-forces on her display. Her vision grayed at the edges, but she kept flying. The Ravager following her could not match the turn and flew past, giving her a clear shot. She destroyed it with a burst from her plasma cannons. "Reaper Wing, split formation," she ordered. "Make them chase us separately, then regroup on my mark." The squadron scattered in 6 different directions. The Ravagers, programmed to pursue efficiently, split up to follow them. But efficiency was not the same as unpredictability. Subin counted to 10, then shouted, "Regroup now!" The human fighters suddenly turned and accelerated back toward each other, their paths crossing at impossible angles. The Ravagers following them collided with each other, unable to adjust quickly enough for the insane maneuver. Dozens of enemy fighters were destroyed or disabled in seconds. "That's what happens when you fight Deathworlders," Subin yelled, her heart pounding with adrenaline. The Indomitable was at the center of the battle, drawing fire from hundreds of Ravager bioships. Its shields were holding, but barely. Taman walked calmly across the bridge as explosions rocked the ship around him. "Jiwoo, are the nuclear warheads ready?" he asked. "Ready and armed, Admiral," she confirmed. "But sir, using them at close range is suicide. The radiation and blast wave will damage us severely." "I know," Taman said, "but the Ravagers don't expect it because no sane species would do it. Launch all warheads, then accelerate directly into the blast zone." The bridge crew stared at him. One young officer spoke up nervously. "Sir, our shields can barely handle the punishment we're taking now. A nuclear blast at close range could destroy us." Taman met the officer's eyes. "Could, or it could destroy hundreds of Ravagers and give us the advantage we need. Sometimes you have to risk everything to win." "Launch the warheads," Jiwoo gave the order. 20 nuclear missiles streaked out from the Indomitable, spreading in a wide pattern around the ship. The Ravagers ignored them, focused on their attack. They had evolved to fight energy weapons and bioweapons. They had no defense against primitive atomic fire. The warheads detonated simultaneously. Space turned white with nuclear fury. The Ravager bioships close to the blast simply disintegrated. Those further away were burned and crippled. And the Indomitable, its shields glowing red with the strain, punched through the blast zone before the radiation could penetrate its armor. "Shields at 15%, Jiwoo reported. "But we're through. The path ahead is clear." "Good," Taman said. "Now do it again." Down on the surface of Velthas Prime, Captain Junho and his Marines were fighting a different kind of battle. They had dropped from orbit in armored pods, landing in the middle of a civilian evacuation zone that was under attack by Ravager ground forces. The Ravagers on the ground were different from the spaceborne ones. They were insect-like, with multiple legs and snapping jaws that could bite through steel. They moved in swarms, overwhelming defenders through sheer numbers. But they had never fought human Marines in combat armor. Junho's armor made him 3 meters tall and strong enough to lift a small vehicle. His rifle fired chemically propelled slugs that tore through Ravager armor like paper. Around him, his Marines formed a defensive line, their armor making them look like ancient warriors from human mythology. "Hold the line," Junho roared. They do not pass. Quillari civilians moved to the evacuation shuttles. We will cover you. A ravager the size of a bus charged at him. Junho planted his feet and fired. The creature kept coming even as bullets tore into its body. At the last second, Junho dropped his rifle and caught the creature's jaws with his armored hands. The servos in his suit screamed with strain, but they held. With a roar of effort, he forced the jaws apart until the creature's head split in two. Behind the human line, Quillari civilians were running toward the evacuation shuttles. They were terrified, but they were moving. Children clutched their parents' hands. The elderly were being helped by the young. All of them were alive because humans they had never met were willing to die to protect them. Back in space, engineer Hyunwoo had an idea that was either brilliant or insane. He contacted Warrant Officer Min Seo, the weapons specialist on one of the support ships. Min Seo, we have mining lasers on the support vessels, right? He asked. Yes, but they're not weapons, Min Seo replied. They're industrial tools for breaking up asteroids. But they're lasers, Hyunwoo pressed. Very powerful lasers. And the Ravagers have never seen them used in combat. They would have no adaptation data. Min Seo caught on immediately. We could mount them on combat hardpoints and use them as improvised weapons. They would cut through bioarmor like it's nothing because the Ravagers don't know to defend against them. Exactly. How fast can you do it? Give me 20 minutes. You have 10. Min Seo and her team worked frantically, redirecting power systems and jury-rigging mounting points. It was dangerous work, the kind that would get you fired in peacetime. But this was not peacetime. 8 minutes later, the mining lasers were ready. The support ships moved forward, their mining equipment now pointed at the enemy. When they fired, the industrial lasers cut through Ravager bioships with terrifying efficiency. These were tools designed to slice apart asteroids made of solid rock. Against organic matter, they were devastating. Jiwoo was watching everything from the Indomitable's bridge, keeping track of 1,000 different factors. She noticed something important in the data flowing across her screens. Admiral, I see a pattern, she said urgently. The Ravagers are protecting a specific area of space. Look, they're concentrating their heaviest ships in that sector, and they're not leaving it even when we attack elsewhere. Taemin studied the display. They're protecting something important. On the medical bay's communication system, Dr. Haewon was listening. Admiral, the data I studied mentioned that Ravager swarms are controlled by a central bionode. If that's what they're protecting, destroying it could break the entire swarm. Then that's our target, Taemin decided. Jiwoo, coordinate with all ships. We're going to punch through to that sector and destroy whatever they're protecting. Sir, that means abandoning our positions across the rest of the battlefield, Jiwoo warned. The Ravagers could surround us, I know. But if we destroy that node, they won't be able to coordinate anymore. It's all or nothing. Taemin activated the fleet-wide channel. All ships concentrate on coordinates marked on your screens. We are going through their defenses. Maximum speed, all weapons free. This is our chance to end this. The human fleet turned as one and accelerated toward the protected sector. The Ravagers tried to stop them, throwing everything they had at the approaching ships. Human vessels took terrible damage. Shields failed, hulls were breached, people died at their stations, but they did not stop. The destroyer, Relentless, lost all power but used its momentum to crash into a Ravager battleform, taking it down. The cruiser Dauntless continued fighting even after its bridge was destroyed, its crew directing fire from emergency stations deep in the ship. Fighter after fighter fell, but for every human pilot who died, they took dozens of Ravagers with them. Subin's fighter was damaged, her left engine destroyed and her shields gone. She could have retreated, but she did not. She accelerated toward a massive Ravager protecting the path forward and fired everything she had. Her missile struck true and the creature exploded. In the moment before her fighter flew through the explosion, she ejected, her escape pod tumbling away into space. The Indomitable led the charge, Taemin standing firm as his ship shook with impacts. Fires burned on multiple decks. Casualty reports were flooding in, but they were almost there. Target in visual range, Jiwoo announced. On the screen appeared something massive and horrible. It was a bionode, a pulsating organic structure the size of a small moon. It was covered in writhing appendages and glowed with a sickly purple light. The bridge of the Indomitable was filled with smoke and the smell of burned equipment. Warning lights flashed across every console, and several stations were completely dark. Taman stood in the center of it all, watching the view screen as the Ravager swarm fell apart. Without their central intelligence, the Ravagers were just animals, confused and fighting each other more than they fought the humans. The surviving human ships hunted them down methodically, but the real battle was over. Veltus Prime was saved. Damage report, Taman said quietly. Jiwoo looked at her screen and her face was grim. 12 ships destroyed completely. 8 more are so damaged they cannot move under their own power. We have taken casualties on every remaining vessel. Total dead is over 2,000. Wounded is more than 5,000. Taman felt each number like a physical blow. 2,000 people who had followed him into this battle and would never go home. He sat down in his chair, suddenly feeling every year of his age. They died as heroes, Jiwoo said softly. Every one of them. I know, Taman replied. But that does not make it easier. Down on the surface, Captain Jun-ho was helping pull injured Quillari civilians from collapsed buildings. His armor was dented and scorched, and he had lost 16 Marines in the ground fighting. But the evacuation zone was secure. Thousands of civilians were safe because of the line his Marines had held. A young Quillari child approached him, no higher than his armored knee. She looked up at him with her large compound eyes and said something in her language that his translator converted. Thank you for saving my family. Jun-ho knelt down, his massive armor making the gesture gentle. You are welcome, little one. That is what humans do. We protect those who need protection. In the medical bay, Dr. Yunseo had not slept in 30 hours. She moved from patient to patient, treating wounds that ranged from minor burns to critical injuries. Many of her patients were not human. Quillari casualties were being brought up from the surface, and she treated them with the same care she gave to human crew members. One Quillari looked at her with wonder. You are saving us, why? We are not your people. Yunseo smiled tiredly. Because you need saving. That is reason enough. The coalition evacuation ships began to return, slowly and cautiously. They had been fleeing the system when the battle ended. Now they came back to find something impossible. The Ravager swarm was destroyed, and a human fleet that should have been annihilated was still fighting. On one of those ships was Counselor Rathzek, a Vryn representative who had always opposed human membership in the coalition. He was reptilian, with scales that changed color with his mood. Right now they were showing confusion and fear. How is this possible? He demanded. The Ravagers destroyed 500 coalition ships. The humans had less than 50 vessels. This should not have happened. His aide checked the reports coming in. Sir, it appears the humans used tactics that the coalition forces never considered. Ramming attacks, close-range nuclear weapons, improvised weaponry. They fought with a level of aggression that borders on insanity. Deathworlders, Rathzek hissed. This proves what I have always said. They are too dangerous. Too violent. We must limit their power before they threaten the entire galaxy. But even as he spoke, messages were flooding through the coalition networks. Species from across the galaxy were watching recordings of the battle, seeing how humans had charged into impossible odds to save a world that everyone else had abandoned. The reaction was not what Rathzek expected. Some were afraid, yes, but many were grateful. Many were impressed. And some were beginning to ask uncomfortable questions about why the coalition had not done what the humans did. Back on Earth, Admiral Da-Yun was dealing with the political situation. The Coalition Council had called an emergency session, and she was required to attend via hologram. She stood in the projection chamber, her image appearing in the council hall light years away. Counselor Rathzek was leading the accusations. The humans acted without authorization. They ignored direct orders to stand down. They endangered coalition evacuating vessels with their reckless tactics. Admiral Da-Yun, your forces have committed an act of military insubordination that cannot be tolerated. Da-Yun waited for him to finish. Then she spoke, her voice calm but carrying an edge of steel. Counselor, with respect, my forces saved 4 billion lives that this council had already written off as lost. They defeated an enemy that destroyed your combined fleet, and they did it by risking everything because it was the right thing to do. The right thing? Rathzek's scales flushed red with anger. You speak of morality while ignoring the chain of command. The humans are proving to be exactly what I warned about. Dangerous, unpredictable, and unwilling to follow galactic law. Perhaps galactic law needs to be questioned, said a new voice. Ambassador Velthar entered the council chamber. He had been on the surface of his homeworld just hours ago, but he had come directly to the council to speak. His appearance was still disheveled, his antenna bent from stress, but his voice was strong. Councillor Rathzek, you and others on this council made a decision to abandon my world. You decided that 4 billion Quillari lives were not worth the resources to save. You ordered your fleets to retreat and let my people die. Velthar's voice shook with emotion. But one species did not retreat. One species, the ones you call dangerous and violent, came to help us. They did not ask permission. They did not calculate acceptable losses. They simply did what was right. He turned to address the entire council. I have served on this council for 40 years. I have believed in the Coalition's mission of unity and peace. But today I learned that our peace is only for those who are convenient to save. Our unity only extends to those who are not too much trouble. Velthar's antenna straightened with determination. The humans showed us what this coalition should be. They showed us that protecting others means accepting risk, accepting sacrifice, accepting that sometimes you must fight instead of debate. They are not perfect. They are violent and aggressive, and they do things that terrify us. But when we needed heroes, they were the only ones who answered. The council chamber was silent. Many councillors looked uncomfortable. Some looked ashamed. Admiral Daun took advantage of the moment. Councillors, I have documentation from the battle. Combat logs, tactical recordings, casualty reports. I suggest you review them before making any judgments. She had brought Ensign Kyungmin with her, the young officer who had documented everything. His recordings showed every moment of the battle in detail. The sacrifices, the courage, the impossible decisions that had to be made. The council watched. They saw the Tenacious ram the Ravager bioship. They saw Subin and her pilots pulling maneuvers that seemed suicidal. They saw Taemin ordering nuclear strikes at point-blank range. They saw human Marines holding defensive lines while Quillari civilians evacuated behind them. They saw humans dying so that aliens could live. When the recordings ended, the chamber remained quiet for a long moment. Finally, one of the other councillors spoke. She was a Thrin, a species known for their philosophical nature. I believe we owe humanity an apology. More than that, we owe them our thanks. They succeeded where we failed, not because they are stronger or have better technology, but because they were willing to do what we were not. Councillor Rathzek tried to object. But the precedent this sets is dangerous. If we allow humans to act without authorization, other species will do the same. The Coalition will fall into chaos. The Coalition already fell into chaos, Velthar said sharply. When we abandoned Velthus Prime, we abandoned our principles. The humans simply reminded us what those principles should be. The debate continued for hours. Councillor Rathzek argued for restrictions on human military action. He wanted oversight committees, mandatory authorization for any deployment, limits on weapons development. He gathered support from other species who feared human power, but Velthar and his allies argued just as hard. They pointed out that restricting the only species willing to take real action would cripple the Coalition's ability to defend itself. They noted that the Ravagers were still a threat in other sectors, and humanity's aggressive tactics might be the only way to defeat them. Finally, a vote was called. The motion to restrict human military operations failed by a narrow margin. Instead, a new resolution was proposed and passed. Humanity would be granted full military partnership status in the Coalition. Human officers would be given command positions in Coalition forces. Human tactics would be studied and incorporated into Coalition training. Admiral Taemin and Admiral Daun would both be given seats on the Coalition Military Command Council. It was a victory. But Councillor Rathzek's faction was not destroyed. They simply retreated, waiting for another opportunity to limit human influence. Back on the Indomitable, Taemin received the news of the Council's decision. He sat in his ready room looking at reports of the crew members who had not survived. Their names, their service records, their families who would receive the news that they were never coming home. Jiwoo entered without knocking. She sat down across from him and waited. We won, Taemin said quietly, but the cost was so high. It always is, Jiwoo replied. That is the burden of command. You made the right choice even though people died because of it. 6 months had passed since the Battle of Velthus Prime, and the galaxy had changed in ways that nobody could have predicted. The human fleet was no longer isolated at the edges of Coalition space. Now, Human ships patrolled alongside vessels from a dozen other species, and the sight was becoming normal rather than strange. Captain Bora stood on the bridge of the CSS Unity, a new class of warship designed by human and Quillari engineers working together. The ship combined the heavy armor and aggressive weapons of human design with the advanced energy systems and shields of Quillari technology. It was faster, stronger, and more efficient than either species could have built alone. Bora was young for a captain, only 32, but she had earned her position through skill and courage during the battle at Velthas Prime. Now she commanded a mixed crew of humans, Quillari, and 3 other species who had volunteered to serve on a joint vessel. It was the future of the coalition, people working together instead of apart. "Captain, we are receiving a distress signal," her communications officer reported. He was a Quillari named Tekvor, and his antenna twitched nervously as he read the message. "It is coming from the frontier territories. A colony world is under attack." "What kind of attack?" Bora asked, walking to the main display. "Unknown hostiles. The message is fragmented, but they are asking for immediate assistance." Bora did not hesitate. "Set course for the colony. Maximum speed. Send word to Admiral Taman that we are responding." The Unity jumped to hyperspace, racing toward danger without waiting for orders. That was the new way in the Coalition fleet. Initiative was encouraged. Taking action was expected. Waiting for committees to debate while people died was no longer acceptable. Admiral Taman received the message in his office on the Coalition command station, a massive facility that served as the military headquarters for the entire Coalition. He had been promoted again after Velthas Prime, given command of the 1st Coalition Strike Force. It was a mixed fleet of over 200 ships from 20 different species, all trained in the human style of warfare. His second in command was Commander Jiwoo, who now held the rank of Admiral herself. She commanded the Indomitable, fully repaired and upgraded with the best technology the Coalition could provide. The ship had become famous across the galaxy, a symbol of human determination and sacrifice. "Another frontier attack," Jiwoo said, reading the same report. "That is the 4th one this month. Someone is testing our defenses, or testing our response time," Taman replied thoughtfully. "They want to see if we are still reactive and slow, or if we have learned to act quickly." "What do you want to do?" "Send the 7th and 9th battle groups to support Captain Bora, and activate the Rapid Response Force. If this is a test, let us show them that the Coalition has changed." The Rapid Response Force was Captain Junho's creation. It was an elite unit that combined human Marines with specialist soldiers from other species. They trained together, learned each other's strengths, and had become the most effective ground combat force in Coalition history. When they deployed, battles were won quickly and decisively. On Velthas Prime, a new academy had been built in the ruins of what was once a battlefield. The Coalition Military Academy now trained officers from across the galaxy in modern warfare tactics. The curriculum was based on human military doctrine, adapted for different species and situations. Pilot Subin was one of the instructors. She had survived the battle, rescued from her escape pod by a Quillari search ship. Now she taught young pilots from a dozen species how to fly with aggression and creativity, instead of by the book. Her current class included 2 humans, 3 Quillari, 1 Vryn, and 1 Thryn. They watched as she demonstrated a maneuver on the simulator that made several of them look sick. "This is called the Deathworld drop," Subin explained. "You dive toward the planet at maximum speed, then pull up at the last possible moment while firing all weapons. The enemy expects you to pull up sooner because staying in the dive looks suicidal. But if you can handle the G-forces, you get 3 extra seconds of uninterrupted firing time." One of the Quillari students raised a limb. "Instructor Subin, that maneuver would crush most of us under the acceleration forces." "True," Subin agreed. "So you adapt it. Use your species' advantages. Quillari flexibility means you can handle rotational forces better than humans. Vryn reaction times let you process targeting data faster. Thryn can operate in lower oxygen environments, giving you endurance we do not have. The principle is the same for everyone. Find what your enemy thinks you cannot do, then do it anyway." The students nodded, beginning to understand. It was not about copying human tactics exactly. It was about adopting the human mindset of finding advantages in unexpected places. Engineer Hyun Woo had become the head of Coalition ship design. He worked in massive shipyards that orbited Velthas Prime, overseeing the construction of a new generation of warships. Human durability, Quillari energy systems, Vrin sensor technology, and Thrin computing power all came together in vessels that were better than any single species could create. But not everyone was happy with these changes. Councillor Rathzek had spent the last 6 months building political opposition to human influence. He gathered support among species who feared that the coalition was becoming too militarized, too focused on war instead of peace. He called a council meeting and presented his arguments with passion. Look at what we have become. Before humans joined us, the coalition was an organization dedicated to diplomacy and peaceful cooperation. Now we build warships and train soldiers. We celebrate victory in battle instead of avoiding battle altogether. The humans are changing us into something we never wanted to be. Ambassador Seok Jin, the new human representative, listened to the speech without interrupting. When Rathzek finished, Seok Jin stood to respond. Councillor Rathzek, I understand your concerns. Peace is valuable. Diplomacy is important. But peace without the ability to defend it is just waiting to be conquered. The Ravagers prove that. They did not come to negotiate. They came to consume, and when they arrived, your peaceful coalition was helpless. He looked around the council chamber, meeting the eyes of representatives from dozens of species. Humans did not make the galaxy more dangerous. We simply helped you face the dangers that were already there. The Ravagers exist whether you acknowledge them or not. The threats on the frontier are real, and pretending otherwise does not make anyone safer. But at what cost? Rathzek demanded. We are losing our identity. We are becoming a military alliance instead of a civilized community. You can be both, Seok Jin replied calmly. You can value peace while being ready for war. You can prefer diplomacy while having the strength to fight when necessary. That is what humans learned on Earth. We did not want to be warriors, but our world forced us to become strong or die. Now we are sharing that strength with you. Not to make you like us, but to help you survive. A young voice spoke up from the gallery. May I address the council? Everyone turned to look. A Quillari girl no more than 15 years old in human terms stood nervously. It was young Velrian, the child who had survived the Ravager invasion. You may speak, Velthar said gently. He was now the senior counselor for his species, elevated because of his advocacy for human Quillari cooperation. Velrian walked to the center of the chamber, small and fragile compared to many of the species present, but her voice was steady. My name is Velrian. 6 months ago, I watched the Ravagers destroy my city. I saw buildings burn and people die. I thought I was going to die too. But then the humans came. I saw their ships flying overhead, fighting enemies that should have killed them. I saw their marines standing between us and the monsters. They did not know me. They did not know any of us. But they came anyway. She looked directly at Councillor Rathzek. You say humans are making us too violent. But I am alive because of their violence. My parents are alive. My friends are alive. 4 billion of my people are alive. And now I am studying human history and tactics because I want to be like them. Not because they are perfect, but because when others ran away, they ran toward danger to help people they had never met. The young Quillari's antenna straightened with determination. When I am old enough, I am going to join the coalition fleet. I am going to serve on a human ship if they will take me. And someday when someone else needs help, I want to be the one who answers the call instead of debating whether it is too dangerous or too expensive. The council chamber erupted in discussion. Some councillors argued with each other. Others sat in thoughtful silence. Velrian's words had struck something deep in many of them. The debate continued for hours. Finally, a vote was called on Councillor Rathzek's proposal to reduce military spending and limit human influence in coalition forces. The proposal failed by an even larger margin than before. But something else happened that surprised everyone. A new proposal was made by the Thrin representative. She suggested creating a special council position focused on military readiness and rapid response to threats. The position would have authority to deploy forces without full council approval in emergency situations. Admiral Taemin was nominated for the position. The vote was not even close. He was confirmed with overwhelming support. The bridge of the Indomitable was quiet except for the soft beeping of instruments. Captain Taemin sat in his chair, watching the stars drift past the view screen. His ship was huge, the largest warship humanity had ever built, but out here in the empty darkness of space it felt small. Taemin was a tall man with tired eyes. He had seen many battles before Earth joined the Galactic Coalition, back when humans were still fighting each other. Now, 30 years after first contact with aliens, humans were part of something bigger, but the other species in the galaxy did not trust them. They called Earth a death world, a planet so dangerous that only monsters could survive there. They called humans Deathworlders, and they were afraid. Commander Jiwoo stood beside his chair, checking reports on her tablet. She was sharp and clever, always 3 steps ahead in her thinking. The crew respected her almost as much as they respected Taemin. Together, they had kept the Indomitable running smoothly for 5 years, patrolling the edges of Coalition space where nobody else wanted to go. Another quiet day, Jiwoo said, not looking up from her screen. The other Coalition ships are avoiding us again. Taemin smiled slightly. Can you blame them? Last time we tried to join a patrol group, half of them requested immediate transfer to other sectors. Their loss, Jiwoo replied. We do good work out here. Before Taemin could respond, every screen on the bridge suddenly flashed red. Emergency signals flooded through the communication system, so many that the computers struggled to process them all. The crew jumped into action, fingers flying across keyboards as they tried to understand what was happening. Captain, we're receiving a priority distress call, the communications officer shouted. Actually, hundreds of distress calls. They're all coming from the same sector. Put it on screen, Taemin ordered, sitting forward in his chair. The view screen changed to show chaos. Alien ships were exploding in bright flashes of light. Thousands of strange creatures swarmed through space like angry insects. They were organic, almost alive, with dark shells and glowing red eyes. They moved together in perfect coordination, tearing apart everything in their path. What are those things? Jiwoo whispered. Engineer Hyunwoo ran onto the bridge, his uniform half open and sweat on his forehead. He must have sprinted from the engine room. Those are Ravagers, he said, breathing hard. I've read about them in the old reports. They're from outside our galaxy. They eat everything, every living thing they find. The distress calls kept coming. Alien voices screamed for help in dozens of languages. The translation systems could barely keep up. Ships were dying by the hundreds, and the battle had only just begun. Then one specific signal came through, cutting across all the others. It was a private channel, one that very few people knew existed. Taemin recognized the voice immediately. Captain Taemin, this is Ambassador Velthar. Please, you must hear me. Taemin's expression changed. Velthar was a Quillari, an insect-like alien who had been the only member of the Coalition Council to vote in favor of accepting humans 30 years ago. When everyone else called humans dangerous, Velthar had called them necessary. Without him, humanity might never have been allowed to join the galactic community. Put him through, Taemin said quietly. Private channel. The view screen changed to show Velthar's face. The Quillari looked terrible. His compound eyes were dim, and his antenna drooped with exhaustion. Behind him, Taemin could see fires burning and people running in panic. Captain, Velthar said, his voice shaking. My world is dying. The Ravagers have come to Velthas Prime. Our fleet tried to stop them, but we failed. The Coalition fleet came to help us, but they failed too. Hundreds of ships destroyed in hours. The Council has ordered a full retreat. They say my planet cannot be saved. They say it is better to evacuate the survivors and abandon our home than to waste more resources on a lost cause. Taemin felt something cold settle in his stomach. How long do you have? 2 days, maybe 3, before the Ravagers break through our final defenses. 4 billion people, Captain. 4 billion souls who will die because the galaxy has decided they are not worth saving. Velthar's voice broke. I know I have no right to ask this. I know your government has not authorized any action, but you are the only hope I have left. The only one who might understand what it means to fight when everyone says you should surrender. The bridge was completely silent. Every crew member was watching their captain, waiting to see what he would say. Taemin thought about the history he had studied as a young officer. He thought about all the times humans had faced impossible odds and fought anyway. He thought about the wars on Earth, the disasters and the struggles, and how humanity had survived by refusing to give up even when giving up made sense. Ambassador, Taemin said slowly, you stood for us when we had no friends. You believed in us when everyone else saw only monsters. I have not forgotten that. Does that mean you will help? Hope flickered in Velthar's eyes. Taemin looked at Jiwoo. She met his gaze and gave a small nod. He looked at Hyunwoo, who was grinning despite the situation. He looked around at his crew and saw the same determination on every face. It means we are coming, Taemin said. I cannot promise we will succeed. I cannot promise we will even survive, but humans do not abandon friends in need. Hold on, Ambassador. The Deathworlder fleet is on its way. Velthar's antenna lifted slightly. Thank you, Captain. Thank you. I will tell my people that hope still lives. The connection ended. Taemin stood up from his chair and walked to the front of the bridge. He activated the ship-wide communication system so every person on the Indomitable could hear him. This is Captain Taemin. In a few minutes, I am going to make a choice that might end all of our careers. Earth Command has not authorized what I am about to do. The Coalition Council does not want us to do it. But I'm going to do it anyway, and I want you all to understand why. He paused, choosing his words carefully. 30 years ago, one alien stood up for humanity when we needed a friend. Today, that alien's world is dying, and his people are being slaughtered by an enemy that has already defeated the entire Coalition fleet. The galaxy has decided that saving them is impossible, so they are running away. Taemin's voice grew stronger. But we are not the galaxy. We are humans. We are Deathworlders. We come from a planet that tried to kill us every single day, and we survived because we never learned how to quit. I am taking this ship to Velthus Prime to fight the Ravagers. Anyone who does not want to come can transfer to another vessel, and I will not think less of you. But I am going, even if I have to go alone. He waited. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. Then Jiwoo stepped forward and said loudly, "The commander stays with the captain." Hyunwoo was next. "The engines will get us there, Captain. I'll make sure of it." One by one, every officer on the bridge stood and declared they were coming too. Below decks, the same thing was happening throughout the ship. Not a single person asked for transfer. Taemin felt pride swell in his chest. "Thank you. All of you. Now send a message to every human ship in this sector. Tell them where we are going and why. Tell them they are welcome to join us if they choose." The message went out across space, traveling at light speed to every human vessel within range. The Indomitable turned toward Velthus Prime and began to accelerate, its massive engines burning bright in the darkness. Within an hour, the responses started coming back. Every single human ship in the sector was changing course to follow them. Destroyers, cruisers, support vessels, even the small patrol boats. None of them had been ordered to go. All of them were going anyway. The Deathworlder fleet was gathering, and they were heading straight into a battle that every tactical analysis said they could not win. But humans had never been very good at accepting what they could not do. Taemin watched the stars and thought about what was coming. He thought about the people they were going to try to save, and the crew members he might lose in the attempt. He thought about the speech he would have to give to prepare them for what lay ahead. But mostly, he thought about a simple truth that had guided humanity through every dark moment in their history. Sometimes the right thing to do is also the hardest thing to do, and sometimes the only difference between heroes and everyone else is that heroes do it anyway. The communication room on Earth was in chaos. Screens covered every wall, showing ships moving across the galaxy, messages flooding in from dozens of sources, and at the center of it all sat Admiral Da-Yun. She was older than most of the people in the room, with gray streaks in her black hair and lines around her eyes from years of difficult decisions. Right now, she was watching one particular screen with intense focus. "Admiral, the Coalition Council is demanding an immediate response," her aide said nervously. "They want to know why human ships are moving toward Velthus Prime without authorization." Da-Yun did not look away from the screen. "Tell them we are investigating the situation and will respond within 72 hours. But Admiral, they want an answer now. They're threatening to revoke our coalition membership if we don't recall our ships immediately." "Then I suppose we have 72 hours to decide if we care about their threats," Da-Un said calmly. "Captain Taemin is doing what needs to be done. The least we can do is give him time to do it." On the Indomitable, Hyunwoo was pushing the engines harder than they had ever been pushed before. The engine room was hot, almost unbearably so, and warning lights flashed across every panel. His team worked frantically to keep everything running as the ship accelerated beyond its designed limits. "Chief, we're at 115% capacity," a young engineer shouted over the roar of the engines. "The systems weren't designed for this kind of stress." Hyunwoo wiped sweat from his forehead and grinned. "Good thing we built them stronger than they needed to be. Push it to 120%. We need every bit of speed we can get." "Chief, that's insane. We could blow the whole engine core." "We could," Hyunwoo agreed, "but we won't, trust me. I know these engines better than I know my own family. They'll hold. The engines screamed louder, but they held. The Indomitable surged forward through space, moving faster than any ship its size should be able to move. Behind it, the rest of the human fleet matched its speed, all of them pushing their ships to the breaking point. In the medical bay, Dr. Haywan was preparing for what was coming. She was a scientist first, a doctor second, but today she would need to be both. She had spent the last few hours studying everything the Coalition had on the Ravagers, and what she found terrified her. She called for a meeting with the senior staff. Captain Taemin, Commander Jiwoo, and the other officers gathered in the briefing room. Hae-won put an image on the main screen showing one of the Ravager creatures up close. "This is what we are going to fight," she said quietly. "The Ravagers are not just animals. They are not even just a species. They are a hive mind, millions of creatures controlled by a single intelligence. They learn from every battle, adapting to enemy tactics within hours. The Coalition fleet failed because they fought carefully, trying to minimize losses. The Ravagers learned their patterns and overwhelmed them." Jiwoo leaned forward, studying the image. "So careful tactics won't work." "What will?" "Chaos," Hae-won said. "Unpredictability. The Ravagers adapt quickly, but they need time to process new information. If we can change our tactics faster than they can adapt, we might have a chance." Taemin nodded slowly. "So we need to fight like humans. Fast, aggressive, and completely unpredictable by galactic standards." "Exactly," Hae-won confirmed. "We need to use the fact that we are Deathworlders. Do things that other species would never consider because they seem too dangerous or too insane." Jiwoo smiled grimly. "I think we can manage that." Down in the hangar bay, pilot Subin was briefing her squadron. She was young, barely 25, but she was the best pilot in the fleet. Her squadron was called Reaper Wing, and they had earned that name through countless training exercises where they pulled maneuvers that made instructors shake their heads in disbelief. "Listen up," Subin said to her pilots. "We're going into a fight that killed hundreds of Coalition ships. The Ravagers are fast, they're smart, and there are millions of them. But we have something they don't expect. We're humans. We can handle G-forces that would kill most aliens. We can make turns that seem impossible. We can fly in ways that look suicidal because we've trained our whole lives on a high-gravity world." One of the younger pilots raised his hand. "What's the mission objective?" Subin's grin was fierce. "Simple. Make them think we're crazy. Fly patterns they can't predict. Take risks they can't understand. And kill as many of those things as we can before they realize what hit them." The pilots cheered. They were scared, but they were ready. They had trained for this their entire careers, even if they never thought they would actually face something like the Ravagers. In another part of the ship, Marine Captain Jun-ho was preparing his troops. He was older than most of them, a veteran of the final wars on Earth before humanity unified. He had seen combat that would give most people nightmares, and his face showed every year of it. "We're going to be doing ground operations," he told his Marines, "protecting evacuation zones and holding defensive positions against Ravager ground forces. Our armor is heavier than anything the Coalition uses. Our weapons are more brutal, and we are going to use every advantage we have." He paced in front of his troops, meeting each person's eyes. "I won't lie to you. Some of us are not coming back from this. Maybe none of us. But those Quillari civilians down there need us. 4 billion people are depending on us to buy them time to evacuate or to survive. So we are going to plant our feet, aim our weapons, and we are not going to move until every civilian is safe. Understood?" "Sir, yes, sir," the Marines shouted in unison. Back on the bridge, Jiwoo was calculating their approach. She had pulled up every bit of data on Ravager tactics from the previous battle, analyzing patterns and looking for weaknesses. What she found made her thoughtful. "Captain," she said, "I think I see something. The Ravagers adapt quickly, but not instantly. There's a delay, maybe 15 minutes, between when we change tactics and when they adjust. If we can rotate our strategies every 12 minutes, we can keep them constantly off balance." Taemin looked at the data she was showing him. "That means coordinating the entire fleet to change tactics simultaneously every 12 minutes. That's incredibly difficult. We're humans," Jiwoo said with a slight smile. "Incredibly difficult is what we do." The fleet was now 30 hours from Velthus Prime. They received updates from the planet every few hours, and each update was worse than the last. The Ravagers were breaking through defensive lines. Civilian casualties were mounting. The remaining Coalition ships had completed their evacuation and were leaving the system. Ambassador Velthar sent another message. His face looked even worse than before, but his voice was steady. Captain Taman, the Council has officially declared Velthus Prime a lost world. They have ordered all remaining ships to evacuate. We are alone now except for you. My people are watching the skies, waiting to see if the humans will truly come. They do not believe it. After the coalition abandoned us, they cannot believe that anyone would come to help. Taemin recorded a response. Tell your people to watch the skies, Ambassador. In 30 hours, they will see the human fleet arrive. Tell them to hold on just a little longer. Help is coming. As the fleet drew closer, Taemin prepared his speech. He knew his crew needed to hear from him before they went into battle. He needed to give them something to fight for, something to believe in when the fighting got hard and the casualties started mounting. He activated the fleet-wide communication system. Every human ship in the fleet could hear him, thousands of people listening to what their commander had to say. This is Admiral Taemin to all ships in the fleet, he began. He had been promoted to Admiral by Admiral Da-un just hours before, a battlefield promotion to give him the authority he needed. In a few hours, we are going to arrive at Velthus Prime. We are going to see things that will test everything we believe about ourselves. We are going to fight an enemy that destroyed a fleet 10 times our size. Many of us will not survive this battle. He paused, letting that sink in. But I want you to remember why we are here. We are not here because we were ordered to come. We are not here because it is safe or easy or smart. We are here because someone needed help, and we were the only ones who answered. We are here because a long time ago, one alien stood up for humanity when we had no friends, and today we are returning that favor. His voice grew stronger. We are humans. We come from a planet that tried to kill us with ice ages and volcanoes and diseases and predators. We survived because we are stubborn. We survived because we do not know how to quit. And today we are going to show the galaxy what that means. Taemin looked out at the stars, thinking about the battle ahead. The Ravagers think they have already won. The Coalition thinks Velthus Prime is already lost. But they have not met us yet. They have not seen what Deathworlders can do when they stop holding back. Today we fight with everything we have. Today we show them that humans do not surrender and we do not leave our friends behind. He raised his voice to a shout. All ships, battle formation Alpha. We are going straight through the center of their fleet. Maximum speed, all weapons hot. We are not stopping until every last Ravager is dead or running. For Velthus Prime, for humanity, for every species that needs someone brave enough to stand when others fall.